Hello, everyone. Ah, so this is a very special practice that I'm really happy to introduce you to. It is one of the practices that has really expanded my own awareness. And as we say in the shamanic tradition, move from the sleeping state into the dreaming. And in the dreaming, we come awake within the dream and become part of this amazing, dynamic, pulsating cycle of life that is happening all around us every moment of time. And really, this is an exercise of attuning our awareness into the movement of nature and all the conversations nature is happening. So you can see as you really begin to deepen your awareness into these practices and doing the bird language and the plant identification, you begin to see this amazing web of interconnection where every sound, every movement, even the movement of a breeze or a leaf or the way the clouds may suddenly cover the sun, creates this dynamic play where everything in nature is both listening and responding within every single moment. And to enter the dreaming is to gain privy to this awareness and be part of this magical web of life pulsating around us. And it's really incredible. And so this is a practice called mapping your sit spot. And I want to invite you to do this exercise at least once before our next virtual fire gathering. And I really hope you do this many, many times. And it should be something that you can do really just within about 6 minutes, 10 minutes at the most. And it's a way of just really awakening your awareness to these relationships at play. So let's get right into it. So here I got a picture, and this is a very crude picture, and I want to encourage you to just have crude pictures. These don't need to be amazing forms of artwork with detail. The goal of this is really just to map out the movement of nature, the conversations and relationships at play. And so what this is a map of my sit spot. And you can see at the very top says sit spot map. And right there says there's an S in a circle with an arrow pointing down to an N. And so that's the direction. So in this map, I'm facing south. And so north is actually behind me. And if you look at the very bottom of the map, I'm just going to tell you what these features are so that you can begin to make sense of it. You'll see down here is, on the very back, you'll see a little X, and that's in like these little dash type of square. That's like a back porch that is on the back side of my house. And it bumps up to another part of my house, which is this long rectangle there. And so that's the back portion of my house. The majority of the house is actually off screen there. You can't see it. And so that X marks a sit spot. And then you'll see on that little triangle there, or not triangle, sorry, the rectangle, which is the house, there's a little smaller rectangle that's on the south side of the house. And if you go to the west side of the house to the right, there's another little box. Those are sparrow houses that we have erected, and there's families of sparrows living in them. That strange shape coming up from the top of my house there, that's our raised garden beds. To the right of them, you see 3 circles, and those are a type of flower that attracts a lot of different kinds of birds. And my room is actually just where those little circles are. And so I actually have an amazing sit spot just in my room where the birds can't see me, and I get to witness all kinds of activity from my room, which is amazing. The black dot down there where it says 1B, that used to be our fire pit, and we filled it in with this really rich soil. And so there's a lot of worms, and the birds love to go down there and harvest from that. To the far left side, we have the circle, and there's the little circles. That's our new fire pit with our log stumps that we use for sitting. And you can see that my house is fenced. And along the fence, there are these other circles, which represents different types of trees. And the far right one, the larger circle there, is called a maple tree. The tiny little circle to the right is a bird bath. Now, to the very far right of the page on the bottom, that's my neighbor's house. The big rectangle in the middle of the page is another neighbor's house. Behind that is a large maple tree. The very top right-hand corner is a sequoia tree. And then the two top foliages are other maple trees. And we live right next to a road, so that's a road on the east side of the house to the left with a row of different kinds of trees that are there. And so that's basically my map of the sit spot. And I don't map anything behind me because my house is right behind where I'm sitting. So I don't actually perceive anything behind me. Your sit spot might have an X right in the middle of the page where you're actually able to, decipher everything going all the way around you in the circle. So map this out according to what you can perceive at your sit spot. So this is what we're going to do. And this is going to take your sit spot from this like two-dimensional reality into this four-dimensional experience where you can enter what we call enter the dreamy, becoming awake within the dream, being privy to the conversations at play. And so the other day, as I was doing this, I was sitting there and I noticed a robin come up to the east side of my fence. And so that's 1A. And you'll see that in green on the bottom of my page there near my little sit spot X. And just to give you a heads up, so what we're doing here in this mapping is you want to map out each of these, like, so there's the 1, 2, and a 3. These are about 2-minute intervals. And that's all you really need to do. This whole experience could take you up to like 6-8 minutes tops to do it. And we recommend just keeping it really short and not getting too detailed. It can be easy to get carried away with it, but just continue doing this just in like 2-minute intervals. So the first interval, robin came up to the east side of the fence. That's 1A. And then it flew down to the old fire pit there and began eating some worms. And so that was 1B. So you see I wrote robin feeding in the B in that first box. Then it was shortly after that, I noticed a chickadee flew over from my neighbor's house on the right-hand side, which is the west side, and landed on the bird bath and began taking a drink. And so that was the next movement in that 2-minute cycle. Then right after the chickadee flew in, I noticed the sparrow fly in from the south of my neighbors and came up to its birdhouse, which is what I wrote 1D at the birdhouse on the bottom of my page. And so that was mapping the movement of the first 2 minutes. In the second 2 minutes, I heard a blue jay sound with this kind of urgent kind of sound south of me. And I looked up and it looked as if it was in the big maple tree. As soon as it did that, I noticed how the robin that was down in the fire pit and the chickadee that was in the bird bath flew up into the red maple tree. And that's what's labeled as 2B. All right. When robin flew up there, robin began to go tweak, tweak, and make that kind of sound. And then all of a sudden, everything got really quiet. So now we're in the third section of the 2-minute marks. And so I wrote 3A right there in the middle and just kind of created this dash that went all the way around the area that I noticed became silent. Right after that, I heard a hawk screech over to the southwest area of my sit spot here. And I looked up into the sequoia tree, and there was a red-tailed hawk. Right after that red-tailed hawk screeched, this squirrel that was on the south side of my neighbor's fence climbed up over and went into the cedar bush, which is one of those round bushes there that borders my fence, and hid into the bush. And so that was me mapping out just 6 minutes of activity at my sit spot. And you can see how this is an amazing tool to really begin to hone in your awareness to everything that's happening around you. To hone in, like, what direction is something coming in? What sounds are you hearing? What are the quality of those sounds? Does it sound like an alarm? Does everything sound good? If you don't know what bird is making the sound, you can just put a question mark and put like a little musical note, right? So you can make this your own. And what I recommend is getting like a little notebook that you can carry around with you or even in your pocket. And wherever you are still sitting, or if you're at your sit spot, you can just map it out real quick and write this down and then just go through this process. And when it comes to learning about your plant relatives, this is another way of really mapping out who are the relatives and the relationships of plants in association with the land, with the birds, and the animals. So you can begin to go through your sit spot and you drew out the plants that you see, and then you can go up and greet them and you can practice that etiquette like in the plant walk video, and it says, "Hey, I see you." And you wait till you really feel the plant feeling you or seeing you. And you go through that process. And then you can begin to observe the greater details of those plants that are just at your sit spot. And you can begin to ask, is this a woody plant? Is it an herbaceous plant? Is it a flowering plant? Or is it an ancient plant, which means non-flowering? You can say, what's its branching pattern? Is it an alternating branching pattern, or is it opposites? You can also begin to ask, what is its hoop cycle? Is this going to be a perennial that it comes back every year, just lives through the cyclic seasons of the year? Is it only an annual? Is it just blessing us with its experience and expression of life just for this season? Right? When we want to honor that, it's like, wow, we only have one season with this one plant. How can you honor that and really learn and apprentice from that plant that's only here for a short time? Or maybe it's a biennial. And what year is it? Is it in its first year or is it second year? Right. So in this, you can start to begin to develop these relationships and become a little closer in with who is who and who they're growing next to. And this is just another layer that's going to bring you close in with the plant relatives and the bird relatives and the animal relatives and help you wake into the dreaming so you can be part of this dynamic dreamscape that is alive, pulsating, communicating with you. And so again, I hope you do this at least once. And I really hope actually you just fall into love with doing this like I have. And it's amazing how you'll carry this, whether you're in the city or you're somewhere else you've never been. Suddenly you just become aware of these patterns. And some of these movements might be the way a breeze hits the leaves. And you're like, oh, there's a change of temperature happening here. Wonder what's causing it. And then suddenly you see or notice how the cloud moves over the sun. And so the breeze started before the cloud went over the sun, right? Or maybe you'll find that everything went quiet and then the color changed, like the quality of light changed in your environment. And then suddenly the drops of rain began to fall. So these are all ways of mapping out the happenings and movements of nature. All right, well, I think we'll leave off with that for now. And I'm excited to see examples of your maps, post them in our forum here. And yeah, all right, guys. Om.